This is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to talk about the Audi R8 and why it was an absolutely perfect halo car when it first came out. I'm going to talk about how amazingly effective it was in helping to completely transform Audi's reputation across the world. In the last few years, R8 sales are way down, the market has changed a lot, but when the R8 first came out, it was an unbelievable success for itself and for the Audi brand. And it was a halo car that truly changed everything for Audi. And today I'm going to discuss how that happened and some failure halo cars too. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website with cool cars from the modern era. We've had some fantastic sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this Chevy Corvette ZR1 C7 with only 200 miles, sold for $158,000. This BMW 1 Series M in Valencia Orange, one of my favorite cars, sold for $52,000. And this Toyota FJ Cruiser convertible conversion sold for over $24,000. We love the weird stuff on Cars and Bids. In fact, we love just about everything from the modern era, the 1980s and up. So if you're looking to sell your cool modern enthusiast car, Cars and Bids is the place. Check it out at carsandbids.com. Okay, so a couple of things before I get started. Number one, I want to clarify what a halo car is. Basically, this is a car that sort of sits at the top of a brand's lineup and it tries to generate excitement for the brand. And that was the R8. You know, Audi didn't have like a sports car at the time. They had the TT, but nothing like this, nothing like the R8. So they debuted it to try to kind of reignite interest in the Audi brand. That's a halo car, sort of like the Ford GT, honestly, and the Corvette to an extent as well. Now, I also want to explain why the R8 was such a success, but I want to do that in the context of the failure of a couple other halo cars. Specifically, I want to talk about the Lexus LFA and the Acura NSX. These are two halo cars that were not successful, that did not do what the brands wanted them to do, and that did not have the effect that the R8 did. And I'm going to explain some of the differences in the R8's major success versus the relative failure of the LFA and the NSX. But okay, I want to start with the R8, and I'm going to provide a little context. Back in the day, and by that I mean like the late 90s and early 2000s, back in the day, Audi was a second-class luxury brand. It was not on the level of BMW, Mercedes, frankly, even Lexus. Now, this is hard to imagine now, and younger viewers of my channel, people born in the 90s and the 2000s, they always fight with me when I say this. They're like, no, Audi is cool. It never wasn't cool. It was always cool. And they get like mad, but they're wrong. The truth is, back in the 90s, Audi really was not regarded at the same level of BMW and Mercedes-Benz. It was a second-rate luxury brand, and if you bought one, it was kind of like, oh, you're buying an Audi because you want to be different, or you bought one because you got a good deal, you couldn't afford a Mercedes or a BMW, or maybe you bought one because it offered all-wheel drive, and if you lived in Colorado or the Northeast or certain parts of Europe, BMW, Mercedes didn't have widespread availability of all-wheel drive at the time. That's why you bought it. But no one was like choosing an Audi over BMW or Mercedes-Benz, except maybe this one. But Audi always wanted to be obviously a stronger brand and a stronger rival to Mercedes-Benz and BMW. And that's where the R8 came in. So the R8 launched for the 2008 model year, and it was truly unlike anything that anyone else had seen before, sort of in this segment at all. Here you had this exotic sports car coming from a German luxury brand, something BMW and Mercedes had never done at any point in the past. Now, BMW had the Z8 a few years earlier, and by then Mercedes-Benz had already built the SLR, but both of those cars were way more expensive. The SLR was over $300,000. The R8, when it came out in 2008, the starting price was $109,000 for this mid-engine exotic car, looked like a spaceship, truly, totally an insane departure, V8 powered, offered with a gated manual transmission. I mean, this thing totally blew people out of the water when it happened, and it was like Porsche 911 money for an exotic, special V8 car. It was like a totally different world. And by then, the 911 at the time, the 997 was starting to get pretty old. And, it was like, well, who would buy that when you could have this like total spaceship creation, exotic, insane mid-engine from Audi? It was an amazing proposition at the time. Now, that was pretty cool coming out with the R8, and the R8 would have been successful on its own. just at what it offered. But the real master stroke of the R8's debut when it debuted was not the R8 itself, but it was the rest of Audi's lineup. You see, Audi didn't really want the R8 to just come out and then get people excited about the Audi brand, and then these people they're into the R8 and then they just kind of forget about Audi. That's not what Audi wanted. Audi wanted them to see the R8, to get excited, to maybe get reinvigorated by Audi, and then to think, oh, well, maybe I should consider a lesser Audi if I can't afford the R8. I should consider a different Audi model. And that was the plan. That's what they wanted the halo car to do for them. Audi R8 would bring people into the showroom. Audi A4 would actually sell them a car. Maybe they were looking for like a daily driver or a car for their spouse or for their mountain house or whatever. They didn't want the R8 to just come out and be a success as a car. They wanted it to make the entire brand appealing. You know, Nissan came out with the GTR, and what happens is people come into the Nissan dealer to buy a GTR, and then they do their best to never set foot in a Nissan dealer again. Nobody's buying Altimas and Sentras because of the existence of the GTR. The car is simply too far removed from the Nissan brand, and the GTR does not work as a halo car for this reason. It doesn't really bring people to Nissan. Audi wanted to avoid this. They wanted to have an exotic sports car that would not only be a success on its own, but would also help people reconsider the Audi brand. People who said they would only ever have a BMW or Mercedes, wait, the R8, look at that. That's here. It's cool. Now you should consider Audi again. That's what the R8 was supposed to do. And so, like I said, the real masterstroke of the R8 was what Audi did behind the scenes to prepare its lineup for the R8. Check this out. Audi was very late to the SUV scene. Mercedes-Benz had an SUV in '98, Lexus had one in '99, BMW had one in 2000, Porsche had one in 2003. Audi didn't get one until 2007 with the Q7. It was just disastrously late. But when they did get it, guess what? 1 year later, the R8 appears to help draw people into the showrooms. Perfect timing. Then, the next year, the Q5 debuted, and suddenly R8 customers or new Audi fans are thinking, I could see myself, I can't get an R8, but I could see myself driving that. Perfectly timed for success. And it was more than that. Another car that came out perfectly timed with the R8 was the original S5. Audi had never really had a truly successful coupe globally before, except maybe going back to the Quattro in the 80s, but nothing really recent or very successful. But it just so happened that they released this beautiful new coupe at the exact same time as the R8. So if someone comes into the showroom looking at an R8, but they can't quite afford that, well, hey, there's this other beautiful Audi coupe in the showroom, and it has the same V8 as the R8 and the S5, or you can get an A5 too for even less money. It's like, sir, you can't get you qualified for the R8, but perhaps we can take a look over here at the S5, and that's how you get a sale. And that came out in 2008, same year as the R8, again, perfectly timed for success. Once again, the R8 brings people into the showroom, and then Audi has a new SUV, and then they have a new coupe, and they have another new SUV, and it's like, maybe I should be considering this brand. And there was other great timing too. The new A4 also came out in 2008. It was the first A4 in like 7 years. And here was a brand new interior, totally redesigned, modernized, bigger than before, ready to win over the hearts and minds of people who were just suddenly considering Audi for the first time. And suddenly people are swarming Audi showrooms, many of them for the first time. I mean, it was seriously brilliant. Now, it took an enormous amount of investment to get this done. I have no doubt to develop all of these cars at once, to launch at the very same time, perfectly timed, along with developing a mid-engine exotic car at the same time. It was probably insane money to make it all work. But here's the thing, it did work. Listen to this. In 2005, Audi sold 80,000 cars in the United States. That same year, Mercedes sold 230,000 cars. Audi was 1/3 the size of Mercedes-Benz. You can see now what I'm saying about Audi being a second-class brand. Well, in 2015, 1 decade later, 10 years, Audi sold 200,000 cars in the United States. They almost tripled their sales. Now, Mercedes by that point was at 370,000 sales. They're still way bigger, but instead of being 3 times bigger, suddenly they're not even 2 times bigger. Basically, Audi has gained some legitimacy and they've gained some market share. And I really think the R8 had a big effect in all of this. It was a new Audi headlined by a new car, and it totally changed Audi's fortune in America and frankly across the globe. And so with that in mind, I now want to talk about two halo car failures that tried to copy the R8's formula but failed for two different reasons. Let's start with the Acura NSX. Now, the NSX was supposed to be Acura's version of the R8, pretty much. It was supposed to be the car that would bring people into Acura showrooms and they'd buy other Acura models because they're just so excited and reinvigorated by this brand, this amazing potential of the Acura name. But the problem was that Honda and Acura, they just didn't really fully commit to this. They came out with the halo car after years of development, the NSX, but they did not follow it up with the totally revamped product lineup that was needed in order to actually support it. So you walked into an Audi showroom in 2008, you had the new R8, but you also had the new S5, the new A4, the new Q5, the new Q7. You walked into the Acura showroom when the NSX launched and you had sitting there the ILX, which nobody really wanted, the TLX, sort of a mediocre, uninspired front-wheel drive sedan, the crossovers, which weren't exciting at all. Good vehicles, MDX and RDX, but dull. So you had this amazing car sitting at the top of the Acura range, but no products to actually help propel the brand forward aside from the NSX. It's a halo car from a brand that can't really support a halo car, frankly. And so the NSX didn't really have the effect that Acura wanted. And I suspect that sitting in Acura right now, they probably blame the NSX. They're like, oh, we tried it and it failed. The NSX was a disaster. But the truth is they should have put more investment into the rest of the lineup if they actually wanted the NSX to do for Acura what the R8 did for Audi. They needed other products to help convince people to check out other Acuras, and they just didn't have the products. They didn't fully commit to it. They thought the NSX alone would raise the brand, and it doesn't work that way. And by the way, Acura's sales in 2005, 210,000 units. In 2015, 175,000 units. They actually dropped while Audi went up 3 times. Consider that. Now, the NSX's other problem was that it was too expensive, but that failure is better illustrated with a different failed halo car, and that would be the Lexus LFA. The LFA is this amazing piece of engineering and machinery and equipment, technology. I mean, it's a truly stunning supercar, incredible engine note. And Toyota wanted it to be the R8 of the Lexus brand, the car that would bring shoppers to Lexus like the R8 brought shoppers to Audi. The problem with the LFA was it was simply too expensive. The LFA was like $400,000 when it was new, and nobody bought it. And they had a horrible time selling them. I mean, they had to hire somebody to go around the country and try to convince people to buy them. It was a total disaster. And the people who did buy them, they tucked them away, like people who buy $400,000 supercars usually do. And so you never actually saw an LFA. The R8, on the other hand, was everywhere. You know, I lived in Atlanta when that came out. It was all over Buckhead. There wasn't a single good restaurant valet on a Friday night that didn't have an R8 sitting there. That was the hot car to have. And then you wanted to check out Audi. But the LFA, not so much. Car people knew what it was, car enthusiasts, but normal people had no clue about the LFA. They never saw one, they probably didn't even hear of it, and so it failed as a halo car too. It just wasn't out there enough. And the sad part is that Lexus actually did support the LFA with some new products sort of designed to make Lexus seem younger and target a younger audience. The IS sports sedan was brand new around the time that the LFA came out. The RX crossover, their like bread and butter vehicle, had just been totally redesigned to make it seem like hipper. It was a complete direction change for the design. They wanted to attract like a younger, newer crowd. They had done these kind of big changes to support this halo car, to take the world by storm and to get people excited about the Lexus brand, a younger customer base, the next generation of Lexus owners. But what happened instead was that nobody even really knew that the halo car existed, and it failed to have this effect. And you can see that Lexus tried to counteract this later by coming out with another halo car that was a lot cheaper, the LC, which they wanted to have the R8 effect as well. But to me, that was kind of an admission that the LFA had failed. It hadn't done what they wanted, so they were going to try a different price bracket. But that is what makes the R8 so special. The halo car is hard to pull off. It really is, because you have to do two things. You have to create an insanely compelling sports car that gets people excited and gets heads turning, and that's expensive and it's difficult. And you have to revitalize the rest of your lineup at the same time. So there's a huge investment involved here so that these newly excited people about your brand have something to get. Acura failed to take the step of revitalizing its brand to capitalize on its halo car. Lexus failed to take the step of making an adequate halo car that was visible and that actually delivered all these enthusiasts to the brand. Audi did both masterfully, just perfectly. Perfect timing, they did it all great. And frankly, you look at other halo cars, you see how hard this is to pull off. The 2005 Ford GT didn't really get too many people excited about the Ford Freestyle and the rest of the Ford brand. The Nissan GTR, like I mentioned, it's too far removed from the Nissan brand. The rest of their lineup is not inspiring enough. That car doesn't really serve as a halo either. The BMW i8 is actually another good example. That was a car that was relatively affordable. It did look really cool, and they did have a great product lineup to support it. The problem was the halo car itself wasn't really that well received. Nobody really wanted one. And so the i8 was also a halo car flopped. But Audi did it right, with the right car, the right lineup at the right time. And so in my mind, at least, the R8 will probably be remembered always as the greatest halo car of all time.